Grade 12 learners, and a special welcome to all of you and our teachers. I hope today's paper 1 was great and you guys showed it flames. And this afternoon, we are now going to revise for our paper 2 that we'll be writing next week, Monday. Girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Nikki Wezulu, and welcome to today's revision of Mathematical Literacy Paper 2. This lesson is proudly brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Saibono Discovery Center. Now, guys, without any further waste of time, I want us to get straight into business and start with today's lesson. Like I said, that our main focus for today, we are preparing for paper 2 that we'll be writing on Monday. And the same as today's paper 1, your paper 2 is also out of 150 marks, and then you'll be given 3 hours to complete that paper of 150 marks. I hope you guys were able to complete today's paper within the stipulated time. So guys, this is the structure of our paper. This is how our paper is going to look like on Monday. We've got 3 topics in paper 2. The first topic is your maps, plans, and other representations of the physical world. That is where you work with your maps, your sitting plans, your scales, your elevations, your packaging, your assembling diagrams. So you're going to find those things under your paper 2, under the topics of maps, plans, and other representations of the physical world. The second topic that we are going to find is the topic of measurement. Measurement in paper 2 is the biggest topic. It is the biggest topic because it carries 55% of the entire question paper, which is equivalent to plus minus 82 marks. So out of that 150 that we are going to be writing on Monday, 82 of those marks will be allocated to your measurements. Whereas your maps, plans, and other representations of the physical world, it weighs 40% of the paper. And then that 40%, when you convert it to marks, remember this topic, we do a lot of conversions. When you convert the 40% to marks, it gives you a plus or minus 60 marks out of 115. And lastly is our smallest topic in mathematical literacy, which is probability. It's a very small topic. It weighs only 5%, which is between 7 and 8 marks in the entire question paper. Now, this is how our paper will be structured. The same as paper 1, we will have 4 or 5 questions. Most likely 5 questions, but don't be surprised if it has only 4 questions. And this is how your questions will be structured. The same as today's paper. Your paper 1 on Monday is going to be out of 30, between 30 and 35 marks. So it's plus minus 30. So it can be out of 30 marks, can be out of 32, it can be out of 33, it can be out of 34 or 35 marks. That is your question 1. And it has only the lower order type of questions. Your level 1 type of questions only. The level 1 questions are those questions that are very, very easy. It's your knowledge questions. It's either you know it or you don't. It's not something that you have to think about. I always say this, that if you ever find yourself scratching your head in question 1, then you must know that you are doing something wrong, because all the questions in question 1 are straightforward. It's either it's something that you know or you don't know. Examples of level 1 type of questions in this section, they can ask you to explain the meaning of perimeter. What do you understand by perimeter? You don't even have to think about it. Something that you know, that perimeter, it is the total distance around a shape. That's it, done, case closed. You didn't even have to think about it. That when you are given a circle with a diameter of 4 centimeters, and then they say, determine the radius. You don't have to think about it. You know that to find the radius, you'll have to say 4 centimeters divided by 2. So those are your level 1 type of questions, whereby you don't have to think. Another example of a level 1 type of question, they can give you the scale to say 1:20. And then they ask you to identify the type of scale. So for you to identify this type of scale, you don't have to scratch your head. It's either you know it or you don't know. So the name of this scale, this type of a scale, is called a ratio scale or a number scale. You don't have to scratch your head on this one. So these are the examples of the level 1 type of questions that we can expect in your question 1. And then you have question 2. Question 2 is strictly going to focus on the maps, plans, and other representations of the physical world. This is where now you are going to work now in deeper detail with your scales, either a number or a bar scale, where you are going to work with your different types of maps, interpreting maps, reading information from maps, giving general directions, giving directions from someone that is moving from one place to another, identifying the different routes on your maps, calculating your speed, distance, and time. So all those sections you are going to you can expect those questions under your question 2. And then question 3, which is our biggest section now, question 3, it focuses mainly on measurements. Remember, measurement is big. You've got your conversions there. We've got a lot of conversions, guys. You've got the metric and the imperial system of conversions. So you must know your conversions. You can come across a recipe in question 3. You can be given a table, and then you have to calculate the measurements of the table. You must expect to calculate perimeter, expect to work with area, volume, surface area. You must also expect to work with the BMI. So all those sections, those are large topics that you can expect to find under your question 3. And then we've got question 4 and question 5. Remember, I said your question paper can be out of question 4. And you can have a total of 4 questions, but you can also have a total of 5 questions. So either way, it is acceptable. So under your question 4 and question 5, you've got an integrated context on both the topics of measurements and maps and plans. By integration, I mean that the topics are put together, they are combined. Most of the time, this is where they will give you a floor plan that has a scale, that has a compass directions. So how do they integrate the topics? They can ask you maybe to calculate the actual length or the actual dimensions of the floor plan. Now you are going to use your scale, that is the section of maps and plans. And then from there, they can ask you to calculate the floor area. When you calculate the floor area, then now you are working with what? With measurements. So that is what we mean by integration, whereby a question is one question, but they will ask you questions from measurements. They will also ask you questions from maps and plans. So such questions, you will find them under question 4 and question 5, the questions that are mixed. And most of these questions now, they require a higher level of thinking. These are the higher order type of questions. But just because they are higher order questions, it doesn't mean that they are difficult questions. So our questioning system, we've got 4 cognitive levels. Level 1, it's your easy questions, the ones that you don't even have to think about them. It's either you know it or you don't. And then we've got your level 2 questions, which are those questions that you will find mostly in question 2 and question 3. So level 2 are your recalling, you're remembering what you were taught in class. They can give you the area of maybe of a square, and then you have to calculate the area of a square. You were taught in class how to work with the area of the square. So yours is just to substitute into the formula and perform your calculations. So those are the level 2 type of questions, remembering what you were taught from class. And then your level 3 type of questions, they involve multiple steps, when you have to apply different steps, multiple steps, like when you have to calculate maybe the actual distance between place A and place B, and they didn't give you the map distance. It means step number 1, you must measure the distance from point A to point B, and then the second step, you must use the given scale to calculate the actual distance. After that, you must maybe perform conversions to give the actual distance maybe in kilometers. So you perform different steps. That type of a question is a multi-step question. That is your level 3. And again, just because it's a level 3, it's got multiple steps, it doesn't mean that it is impossible. And then lastly, our higher level now, the one that requires a higher level of thinking, it is your level 4. And just because it's a level 4, just because it requires a higher level of thinking, it doesn't mean that it is difficult. This is where now you have to give your reasoning. This is where you have to give your opinion. They can say that Mrs. Zulu claimed that what and what and what is going to be so and so. Verify if her claim was valid or not. So it means you need to perform your calculations. Then at the end, you must say, therefore, the claim was valid. Therefore, the claim was invalid. So such questions are our level 4 type of questions. Is those questions that require a higher level of thinking. Now, these are the topics, or rather the subsections, that we are going to find in the section of maps and scales. The first section, it is your scale, and then we are going to see the layout plans, the sitting plans, your maps, your floor plans, elevation plans, and your models. And under your models, you've got your assembling diagram. Remember that one where you give instructions on how to assemble items, assembling diagrams. And then you also have packaging. Remember, in packaging, the way we always looking for the best option to package our stuff. So all these topics, they fall under the section of maps and plans. So you must, when you go to your question 2, you must expect to find any of these items under your question 2. Guys, another thing, I'm sure you saw in today's paper that there is a lot of terminology in our question papers. So you will be expected to explain some concepts. I know in your classwork books, you have glossary of terms. I hope no one has spent their classwork books already, because we still have a paper to prepare for. So go back to your classwork books, go ahead and check at the beginning of maps and plans. It was in term 2 when you started. I know your teachers gave you the glossary of terms, so just go and remind yourself that when you talk about a scale, what are we talking about? When you talk about a floor plan, what are you referring to? When you talk about a compound bar graph, the 2D plans, when you talk about a north elevation plan, what is it exactly that you are referring to? All these concepts will be found in your glossary of terms. I'm not saying go and memorize them. You can't, it's impossible, but just scan through them so that in the exam, when they ask you about a highway, then you have an idea at least what a highway is. Because these also, the definitions, those are the examples of the level 1 type of questions that you don't have to think about them. It's either you know it or you don't. And then now, when we start the section of maps and plans, the first item that we treat, it is your scale. Guys, you must know your scale, and you must know that we've got 2 types of scales. 2. It's always so surprising when I interact with the learners at the C classes. I ask them, guys, how many scales do we have? Some will say 3, some will say 4. And I'm like, yo, in Mathslit, guys, we only have 2 types of scales. And what are they? It is your number scale and your bar scale. If you don't want to say number scale, you can say it is a ratio scale. That is also acceptable. You will get your full marks. So here is an example that I gave here of a number scale, which is 1:100. I'm going to rewrite it here. 1:100. So when you are working with the number scale, the first unit, this one, will always represent the unit on the map. Always. It doesn't matter, and it's not always going to be a smaller number. Sometimes it can be a bigger number first and then a smaller number second. But the first number, whether it's small or big, it will always represent the map distance, or the distance on the paper. Whereas the second distance, the distance on your right, will always represent the actual distance, actual or the real distance. Always. Even if it's a smaller item, the one on your right will always represent your actual or your real distance. So what are the type of questions that you can expect in the exam with regards to scale? Number 1, they can give you a scale like this, and the examiner can ask you to identify that type of scale. So I want all of you to take these 2 marks and mention that this is a number scale, or this is a ratio scale. The second question that the examiner can ask you, they can ask you to explain the meaning of the given scale. How do we explain this? We say 1 unit on the map. 1 unit is from this one, it is this one. What about 1 unit? It represents 100 units Which unit 100? This 100. It represents 100 units in reality. So this is how you explain the meaning of this given scale. I know on Monday, most of you will be panicking. You are probably going to even forget the word unit. You won't even know what is unit. So you are welcome to use centimeters. But if you are going to say 1 centimeters here, you must also say 100 centimeters here as well. So your units must always be the same when you're working with the ratio scale. If you don't want to say centimeters, you can say millimeters. But if you say millimeters here, even here, it must also be millimeters. So it means you'll be saying 1 millimeter on the map represents 100 millimeters in reality. Or 1 centimeter on the map represents 100 centimeters in reality, if you are going to forget the word unit. So in general, this is how you explain a scale, and then you get a 2 marks for that. The third question that you can get from scale, guys, they can ask you to calculate the actual distance. Now the examiner can be nice and give you the measured distance or the distance on the map to say the measured distance from point A to point B is 2 centimeters. Use the given scale to calculate the actual distance. But sometimes the examiner won't give you the measured distance. They'll just say, use the given scale to determine the actual distance from point A to point B. You can never ever calculate the actual distance without the map distance. So how do you determine your map distance? It means you will need what? You will need your ruler. So on Monday, all the Maths Lit learners, when you go into the exam room, you go in there with your blue pens, 2 blue pens. You go in there with a calculator, a functional calculator, and most importantly, you go in there with a ruler. There is no way that you are going to write a paper through and you are not required to make measurements. So make sure that you've got your ruler. A proper ruler, guys, a full ruler, not a ruler that you cut in between to share amongst your friends, not a ruler that is not visible. So it must be visible, it must be full, it must be proper, because definitely you are going to make measurements in the exam. So if you don't have a ruler, it means you're going to lose those marks of measuring. So sometimes the examiner won't give you the measured distance. So if they didn't say anything about the measured distance, it means you must measure it yourself. Again, the examiner can be nice and give you the instruction to say, measure the map distance from point A to point B and use the scale to calculate the actual distance. But sometimes the examiner will just be quiet and say, use the given scale to calculate the actual distance from point A to point B. What you guys must remember is that you can never calculate the actual distance if you don't have the map distance. So if the map distance is not given, you can find it yourself by using your ruler. The second type of scale that most learners think is difficult, but it's actually the easiest to work with in comparison to the number scale, it is your bar scale. If you want, you can say it's a line scale. Bar scale or a line scale. Why do we say it's a bar scale? Because it is represented by bars. Again, you can never ever work with a bar scale without a ruler. For us to work with a bar scale, we'll always need a ruler. Without a ruler, you won't even be able to answer that question of the bar scale. So make sure that you've got your ruler on Monday. And then very important, girls and boys, as I've demonstrated here on the screen, when you work with a bar scale, actually measuring in general, when we measure with a ruler, we don't measure from this point where the ruler starts. No, we don't measure from 1. Your brothers and sisters, they always measure from 1. It's wrong. We always measure from where? From 0. You always measure from the point 0. That is how we measure when we use our rulers. And then it will depend on the instruction. Sometimes they'll say measure the distance from point A to point B in centimeters. But if there is no instruction, I prefer to use millimeters, because with millimeters, there are always values in between. There are always values in between, and then those values, they are actually accurate. So I honestly prefer that we use the millimeters, because it has the smaller lines which gives us accuracy as compared to centimeters, because now with centimeters you have to estimate. So unless stated otherwise, when you do your measurements on Monday, I'm advising you to always use the millimeters side. So when you work with the bar scale, these are the possible questions that the examiner can ask you. One, the examiner can ask you, maybe they will be given a map of South Africa, and then there's a scale at the bottom, a bar scale. So the examiner can ask you to identify the type of scale that is used or that is given there. So you must be able to answer that it is a bar scale. Another question that they can ask you to explain the meaning of that bar scale. So how do you explain the meaning of that bar scale? You basically explain what you did. For you to be able to explain a bar scale, you will have to measure it with your ruler. So let us use this ruler that is shown here on the screen, and then let us assume the measurement from here to then it is 4 millimeters. It's not actually 4, but I don't want to confuse you guys. What we see here is a 4, and then it is 4 what millimeters. So how do you explain the scale now? The way that you explain it, you will say 4 millimeters on the map, that is measured on the map, right? On the map represents, this 4 is equivalent to what? It is equivalent to 20 kilometers. So we'll say 4 millimeters on the map represents what? 20 kilometers in reality. So this is how you explain a bar scale. With a bar scale, the units don't have to be the same. That is why I said a bar scale is easier than a ratio scale, because there's no pressure of making units to be the same. You work with what you have at hand. So the way that we explain this, you will say 4 millimeter on the map represents 20 kilometers in reality. Or if you want, you can measure just up to the first bar here. And when you measure for it with the first bar, you are now going to say what? You will say 2 millimeters on the map represents what? 10 kilometers in reality. Or if you want, you can measure up to here. And then here you will say what? 1 millimeter on the map represents what? 5 kilometers in reality. So it's really up to you. This one is just open. As long as you do the right thing, there's actually a lot of ways, a lot of options on how you can explain a bar scale. Another thing that you must know about the scales, there are advantages and disadvantages of using either one of the scales. But then the most common one is the advantage of working with a bar scale. What is the advantage of working with a bar scale? Remember, when you work with maps, maps are drawn on piece of papers. So if it's drawn on a piece of paper, as we keep on making copies, depending on the settings of a photocopier machine, the map on the paper can either be reduced just a little bit, or it can be enlarged than the original size. So if a map is reduced or enlarged, the bar scale, because itself is an image, it also gets reduced or enlarged by the same factor. So you can still use the bar scale, it is still appropriate. Whereas if it's a number scale, if you have a map on the picture and your number scale is 1:200, if you enlarge the picture just a bit, the scale stays the same, is still 1:200. If you reduce the picture, the scale stays the same, is still 1:100. But then now it means now your scale now is no longer accurate, it's no longer relevant, because that original image it was created with has now been either reduced or enlarged. So that is one of the advantages of working with the bar scale, that whether an item is enlarged or reduced, the bar scale will always remain accurate, because it also grows or shrinks according to the map or the picture that we are working with. So what I was explaining in the previous slide is basically a summary of what you see here on the slide, because I told you that you must know how to explain the meaning of a given scale. You must know how to use a ruler, because you'll also need your ruler to explain the bar scale. You must know how to take measurements from one place to another so that you can calculate the actual distance. And the actual distance, you can calculate it using a number scale. You can also calculate it using a bar scale. And you must be able to critique the scale in which an object has been drawn and offer an opinion as to a more appropriate scale. Actually, this one is more of a level 4 type of question. This is where now you have to mention the advantages and the disadvantages of using a particular scale. Like I said, that with the bar scale, we know that with the bar scale, whether the object is reduced or enlarged, it doesn't get affected. It stays the same. And then now, after the scale, now we come into the section of maps. We've got a lot of maps, guys. And every year we get new question papers. We discover different maps. So the most common ones that we did in our classrooms, it is your seating plans, your layout of classrooms. Like as you guys are busy with your exams now, wherever you are writing, whether you are writing in the hall or in the classes, you don't just sit anywhere where you like, or you want to sit next to your friend, or you want to sit at the back. No, you sit according to a seating plan. There is a special seating plan that is arranged per subject, and that is how you sit. So luckily for the Maths Lit learners, I'm sure you guys don't even struggle when you get into your exam venues, because you have learned how to interpret the seating plans, because there are codes that are used. You are able to study it to see, oh, where is the front, where is the back, and where are the windows, and then you are able to locate your seat easier. And then also the layout of buildings and the sports field at a school, the layout of stores in shopping centers. They can give you a map that shows a layout of a shopping center, and then there'll be keys there that shows this is a bank, this is a supermarket, this is the parking lot, this is entrance 1, this is entrance 2, and then they'll be giving you signs then. So they can ask you questions based on the signs. They can even ask you, why is it that maybe Pick n Pay and Checkers are right at the entrance after you've entered the mall? So you must be able to think, why would the grocery shops be just at the beginning, just when you enter the mall? They can ask you, why is it that Dis-Chem and Clicks are so far apart, yet they're selling the same things in that same shopping center or complex? You must be able to analyze that situation and give an appropriate answer. That is a higher order level of thinking, reasoning. And then, but the reasoning is of the things that we see on a regular basis. There's nothing new there. There are no surprises. Also be able to interpret the seating plans in cinemas. Remember, the seating plans, they are seat numbers, your L6, M6. You don't just go to a cinema and sit anywhere. No, there's a certain seating plan. There are seats. They can give you a picture of, to say that, okay, if you want to go and watch a movie, these are the only seats that are available. Maybe the available seats will be painted green, and then the seats that are unavailable will be painted red. So you must also have that skill of interpreting the seating plan of the cinema, or of the sports stadium, the exam centers, like I mentioned, the wedding, the matric dance. The nicest thing, guys, about the maps and plans is that most of the questions, actually all the questions, the answers are there on the map. The answers are there on the plan. So yours is just to read the question, understand it, and go and extract the answer from that map that is provided to you. So this one is an example of a seating plan at a stadium. So the most important thing that you must note, sometimes they can even give you a compass direction here, but here they've got extra notes. Sometimes they'll say it's keys. Make sure that you study those keys, you understand them, because they will never give you this extra information whereas you are not going to use it. The fact that it's given to you, it means you are going to use it at some point. And then you must be able to check the entrances. They can ask you how many entrances are available at that stadium. So you must know it's 1, 2, 3. So it means this place only has 3 entrances. And then there is the seat numbers. They can ask you that a person that is sitting at seat number 333, they want to go and see their friend at 224. Give them the directions on how to move there. Give them the shortest directions on how to move there. They can ask you that these people are here to watch a soccer match between Chiefs and Pirates. Last week match, we know what happened last week. And then if you were purchasing a ticket, which seat number would you prefer? And then obviously you would prefer the seat numbers in the first block. And what would be the reason? Because you are at a close range. It means you can see the match nicely without any distractions of people that are passing, or without being too far. Like myself, I would prefer to sit nearby, because if I'm too far, I wouldn't be able to see what is going on there. Yes, it happens with old age. As you are growing old, the eyesight also become affected. So those are the possible questions. And then they can also ask you to count the number of seats in the stadium. Guys, this question, so many learners are getting it wrong, and it's such a basic question. You have to count them. Grade 1, 1, 2, 3. You must count them one by one. 1, 2, 3, 4. You get what I'm saying, but most people are getting this wrong. So they can ask you to count the total number of seats. Make sure that you are accurate, because we're working with a big number. Count them first, write the number, count them again second round, and if you get the same number, then you know that your counting was accurate. But if you get a different number secondly, you must count for the third time until you get the number that matches one number. Then you know that your counting was accurate. Another example, guys, it is a map with the grid reference. This one is my favorite type of map, and it's so heartbreaking when most of our learners are fumbling in this section. So this one is a grid reference, and then we've got the letters here, A, B, C, D, and then here we've got the numbers. It's 1, 2, it's 3, and it is 4. Now, the thing with the grid reference, guys, they'll always ask about the location or the position of a place. So when you answer this type of a question, you don't look at the writing, the wording. You always look at the point, the dot or a star that is given. That is where the place is. That is your position. An example, if I wanted to know the grid reference of Pretoria, look at Pretoria. Here is Pretoria. You see most of the wording is this side, but the grid reference of Pretoria is actually what? C2. It's not D2. So Pretoria will be where? It will be at C2. Our main focus is not the wording, but it is the dot, the point that is given. If I wanted the grid reference for Nelspruit, where is Nelspruit? This is Nelspruit. The grid reference of Nelspruit will be what? It will be D what, guys? It will be D2. I know most of you will say it is D1. No, not D1. We're looking at this, the dot, the position, which makes Nelspruit to be what? To be D2. Another example of those ones that are confusing, it is the Karoo National Park. Here is the Karoo National Park. So the grid reference for Karoo National Park is what? It is B4. So this is how you work with your grid reference. We focus your main item. It is the dot, the position, not the wording. If the word and the dot are in one place, then good for you. For example, this place here, what is the grid reference of this place? It is A2, straightforward. And then this principle, we also apply it when we are measuring the distance from one place to another. So when we measure the distance, we also measure from the dots, from one dot to another dot. We don't measure from the wording. We measure from one dot to another dot. And then we've got a map that shows the national and provincial road map. And I'm sorry, I know it's not very clear. It's a national map, and it indicates the national roads like your N1s, as you can see the N's there, N14, N7. So it is a national map. Again, it also shows all the provinces in this map. All the provinces are indicated in the map. And then you must note, these are not provinces. These are the countries. They are not provinces. I know your brothers and sisters, they were once asked to identify the provinces that they can see, and then they were mentioning Mozambique, Botswana. Those are countries, they are not provinces, including Lesotho here. Lesotho is right in the middle here. Lesotho is a country within a country. It is not a province. And then you must know, guys, the national roads, like your ends. So your national roads, we see them because of the what of the ends. Example, N1. And then sometimes you've got roads that are your R, maybe let's say R82, R59. The examiner can ask you, what does the R stand for? This is not 82 rands, this is not 59 rands, but rather these are your what? These are your regional roads. You must know this. These are your regional roads. And then lastly, you've got your M's, M1, you've got your M2. When if the examiner asks you what does the M stand for, these are your metro roads or metropolitan. If you're going to forget metropolitan, just say these are your metro roads. So the M's are for your metro roads. You normally find them in your metro cities like your Johannesburg, Pretoria, Durban, Bloemfontein, Cape Town. In your metro cities, that is where you will find your metro roads. So if ever the examiner asks you, you must be ready and you are not shocked, you are not surprised in the exam. And then another type of map, it's your strip chart. The nicest thing about a strip chart, if they ever ask you to give an advantage of working a strip chart, is that you don't have to measure any distance. You don't have to calculate any distance because the distances are given to you. This example that we are having here, it shows the distance from Durban to Pretoria, and then they gave us the distance from Durban. We can see that it is 0. This 0 means you are still in Durban. That is why the distance is 0. So the total distance from Durban to Pretoria is what? Is 557 kilometers. If I wanted the distance from Durban to Escort, the distance from Durban to Escort is 166 kilometers. If I wanted the distance from Harrismith to Escort, you will just say, you will take the 289 minus the 166. So we'll say 289 minus 166. And then let's check. I hope you guys are using your calculators there just to check me if my answers are correct. The distance is 123 kilometers. If maybe you wanted the distance from, let's say, Harrismith to Heidelberg, from Harrismith to Heidelberg. Harrismith to Heidelberg. You will say the 508 minus the what there? The 289. So we'll say 508 minus the 289. The distance is 219 kilometers. So this is how you work with a strip chart. And it doesn't matter whether you work with this side or you work with this side, it will still be the same. This one is from Durban to Pretoria. This one is from Pretoria to Durban. The distance is still the same. So whether you focus on the left or the right, it doesn't matter. Your distances will still be the same. And then they can also ask you to identify the national roads that you see on this map. Obviously, it's 1, 2, 3 national roads. Sometimes you find that N3 appears, even here they say N3. So if you count the national roads, you are not going to count N3 twice. N3 is there's just one N3 in the country, just that it's very long. So you count it once. And then we've got an elevation map. This type of map is mostly used by the people that are taking part in the marathons. So this one, it actually shows the distance above the ground levels. Remember, the people that are running marathons, it's a very long race. So where they run, it's not just a smooth running race track. It has steeps, it has ups, it has downs. They're climbing up the mountains, they're going down. So it's got those ups and downs. As you can see here, when they started here at point 0. So this part here, this is the distance above the ground in in meters. So they started here at 0.0, and then when they just started the race, it was already going up, and then when they reached 50 meters, at least the running was going down. It was going down, and then just after here, this one is your distance that they ran in kilometers. When they reached after 20 kilometers, then there was another steep, and then it went down, and then it was increasing. But then if they now the possible questions that they can ask you in the exam, they can ask you to give the highest steep that they reached. So the highest steep that they reached was this one, which is what? Which is 200 meters. They can ask you to give the total distance of the racetrack. Look, when you have 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. So the total distance, this race, it ended here. So we can say maybe it's about what? It's about 58 kilometers. So it means this is a 58 kilometers. So if you were to decide on the total distance of this race, we can say it was 58 kilometers long. And then they can also ask you what was the height at the Chapman's Peak. You'll read here from the graph, it is just below 150 meters. So those are the possible questions that you can find when you are working with an elevation map. It's quite, guys, the nicest thing about this section of maps is that the answers are always there. You are given a map, and all the possible questions that you are getting, you are reading that information from the given map. And then my favorite, the distance table. The distance table, guys, again, like the strip chart, the nicest thing about it is that you don't have to calculate the distances because the distances are given to you. So this one is the distance table that shows different cities around South Africa. Let us look at this one. From Beaufort West to Bloemfontein, the distance is 540 kilometers. So the distances here are given in kilometers. But when you look at Bloemfontein, from Bloemfontein to Bloemfontein, there is nothing. It's just an asterisk. So the examiner can ask you, why is it that the distance from Bloemfontein to Bloemfontein, there is nothing, there's just an asterisk. Sometimes it'll just be a dash, sometimes it's just blank. That is because you are still in the same place. There hasn't been any movement, you haven't traveled. So that is why the distance there, it is 0 or it is nothing because you are still in the same place. If I wanted the distance from Johannesburg to Cape Town, I will say Johannesburg to Cape Town. It is how much? It is 1,437. And it doesn't matter how you approach it. Even here, I can say from Johannesburg to Cape Town, the distance will still be 1,437. The way that they can make this question tricky, they can say this person is traveling from Cape Town to Johannesburg via Bloemfontein. Via, it means they'll first have to pass Bloemfontein before they can get to Johannesburg. So how do you answer this? You are first going to say, okay, from Cape Town to Bloem, what is the distance? So we say, okay, from Cape Town to Bloemfontein, it is 1015. It is 1,015. And then from Bloemfontein to Joburg, you ask yourself that, okay, now from Bloemfontein to Johannesburg, where's Johannesburg? From Bloemfontein to Johannesburg, it is 398. So it is 398. So the total distance would be 1,015 plus 398. That would be the total distance. You punch that in your calculator and you get the answer. So that is how you will answer the question when they say give the distance from one place to another via another place. Via means you are going to pass the other place first before you can get to your destination. And then we've got the general direction. Guys, this is also one of the tricky questions that when you guys are asked to give the general direction from point A to point B, then you start explaining that from A, 10 left, then 10 right. No. When you see general, think compass. When they want the general direction, they just want you to give the compass direction. They want the north, the east, the west, the south. That's it. That's what they want. So with the general direction, you are working with your compass direction. But you guys are in grade 12. You are in grade 12. You will never get a complete compass direction like this one in the exam. The examiner will just give you north facing up, and then they expect you to know all the other cardinal points. So I know we have our provincial anthem, whereby we say never ever smoke weed. Never is for north, ever it's east, smoke south, weed west. So once it's like this, you know now this is your northeast, this is your southeast, this is your southwest, and lastly this is your northwest. Sometimes they will give you an arrow that is facing that side to say this is your north. If they say that is your north, then you work with that north. You don't say it's a mistake, let me fix it. No, you work with the given north. And then the most important thing is that you know that you must never ever smoke weed. And once you know that you must never ever smoke weed, it becomes easier now to know that then this is northeast, this is southeast, this is southwest, and then lastly this is your northwest. And then you work with this compass direction. And then when you answer these questions, when they say give the general direction from A to B, when they say from, that place where they're saying from, that is where you are going to place your compass direction. And then you check when you put your compass direction there, what is the general direction of that place that they are asking you about. So the key word here, when they say general, think compass. And then as soon as they say from, that place where they are saying from, that is where you are going to position your compass direction. I will show you this in an example that we are going to do this afternoon. And then another possible question that they can ask in directions, they can say, a person wants to travel from point A to point B. Give them directions. So that question, they're telling you this person is traveling from this point to that point, and normally it's around your 3, 4, 5 marks. Then you know that now you must discuss. Now they want a story. Now you must mention that from point A, you must turn left. After turning right, you will see a tuck shop on the left, and then pass the tuck shop. And then when you get at the intersection, you must turn right. That is where you explain. So how do you differentiate between just giving general direction and explaining? The general direction is normally just for 2 marks. So when you see 2 marks, you know they just want the general compass directions. But as soon as the marks are going up to your 4 marks, 5 marks, then you know that you must explain. And how do we allocate the marks when you explain the directions? You must always mention your point of departure. That from point so and so, you must mention your left and your right. That you must turn left, you must turn right, or you must go east, you must go west, continue north, or continue south. Mention those things. And then as you are traveling, mention the landmarks that you are coming across. If there is a church on the street, mention the church. If there is a police station, mention it. If there is a saloon, mention the saloon. The names of the streets that you'll be traveling on, the names of the roads that you'll be traveling on. If there's Nel Mapias Road, you mention it. If you are traveling on the N3, mention the N3. If you see big cities, if you see Harrismith, if you see Ladysmith, if you see Escort, you see Moy River, you mention those cities. So when you explain the directions, you mention the landmarks, you mention your lefts, you mention your right. And then lastly, when you arrive at your destination, you mention that your place, if you are maybe you are going to the clinic, you mention that the clinic will be on your left. That is how we allocate the marks. We don't really care about your fancy English and sentence construction, but we look at key points. Did they mention west? Did they mention left? Did they mention east? Did they mention Harrismith? Did they mention the N3? Did they mention Nel Mapias Drive? So that is how we allocate the marks. Another way, the third way in which the issue of the directions can be asked now, the examiner can give you the step-by-step directions of a person that is moving from one place to another. That one is my favorite. It's very nice, but it's only for 2 marks. So with that one, you need your blue pen or your highlighter. As they're giving you instructions on your map, you are drawing with your pen, you are drawing with your highlighter, so that where you stop, you will know that, oh, it means this is the destination. And then guys, you must also be sure of your left and right. Hey, don't be like me. I'm never, every time I think about left and right, I have to think, oh, which hand am I using to write this one? Or it means this is right. So make sure that you know your left and right. Otherwise, you're going to get lost when you have to follow the given directions because you mixed up left and right. So that one is a very nice one. Just make sure that you highlight the route that is given to you so you arrived at the correct place. And that one is normally for 2 marks. So those are the 3 possible questions that you can get under what? Under your general, under your directions. Not general, remember general, compass directions. So under directions. And then lastly, under the sections of maps and plans, you will also be expected to know your speed, distance, and your time. We know from grade 8 that speed is equals to distance over time. But now that we are in grade 12, the examiner can make things around. They can give you the formula that speed is equals to distance over time, whereas they want you to calculate the distance, or sometimes they want you to calculate the time. So it means here now they want to see whether you are able to manipulate the formula and make time the subject of the formula. So I'm going to remind you guys, I know your teachers have taught you, you've seen this in the C classes, you've even watched it here in the broadcasting session. So just a reminder, we have the DSTV formula. Remember the DSTV that you guys watch? Yes, so it is the DSTV. It's called the DSTV formula, and then you close it. So this line here, this line, it means what? It means division. Whereas this line here, this one, it means what? Multiplication. This one is your multiplication. So how does it work? If you are looking for speed, you will say that speed equals to, what is on top of speed? It is going to be, on top is what? It is the distance. And what is here at the bottom? At the bottom is time. And then this line, I said this line means what? It means division. Meaning if you are looking for speed, speed is distance over time. If you are looking for time, time equals to, there is time. What is on top of time there? On top of time, it is distance. And what is at the bottom of time? At the bottom is speed. And then what is the meaning of this line again? This line means what? It means division. So it means when you are looking for time, time is equals to distance over speed. And then lastly, if you want distance, there is nothing on top of distance. Everything is at the bottom. So you write distance is equals to speed and time. But what is in between the speed and time? It is the multiplication, meaning that if you want the distance, distance is speed multiplied by time. So when you get this question whereby you have to calculate time, but they gave you the speed formula, don't panic. Just remember the DSTV formula. So this DSTV will help you to play around your formulas. Depending on what is it that the examiner wants you to calculate, from this DSTV, you can come up with the 3 different formulas. And then this type of question, we normally see it when they say, remember question 4, question 5, where I say they mix maps and measurements. They'll say, person A is traveling from Pretoria to Durban, and they're traveling for a distance of 650 kilometers, and then their speed is 120 kilometers per hour. Calculate how long is what? Time it took them to arrive in Durban. So now it means you must use the speed or the formula for what? For time. When your distance is what? 660 kilometers, your speed is 120 kilometers per hour. So this is where you are going to use this formula. And then we've got the floor plans and elevations. Guys, you must know how to explain a floor plan. Remember, a floor plan, we always say that a floor plan, it is the top view of the house without the roof and the ceiling. Like picture your home setting, and then remove the ceiling, remove the roof, and then you view your house from the top like that. The way that you are going to view it, you are viewing it, what are you seeing there? You are seeing the floor plan. It shows all the different rooms inside the house, but you are having a top view. That is how I understand a floor plan. So if it works for you, you can use that explanation as well. So we are saying a floor plan, it is the top view of the house without the roof and the ceiling. And then with the floor plan, guys, there are symbols that are used on your floor plan. Sometimes the examiner might be nice and they can give you these symbols, the keys at the bottom, to tell you that this represents a wall, this represents windows, this represents a door, this represents a sink. But sometimes they won't tell you because they expect you, a grade 12 learner, to know the meaning of these keys. The simple basic questions that they can ask you to identify the number of windows that are on this plan. So you will count them one by one, 1, 2, 3, 4, how many windows. They can ask you to count the number of doors that are opening from the outside, or that are opening towards the outside. So the way in which a door is placed, they will ask you how many doors are opening towards the outside, how many doors are opening towards the inside. So you must be able to interpret your plan in that way. They can even ask you to critique or to criticize a given plan. Maybe let's say, for example, they gave you a plan, and then that plan, there is also a bathroom in the house, but the bathroom doesn't have any windows. So if you were to criticize the plan, you will mention that, okay, I see that the bathroom doesn't have windows. So if I was the architect or if I was the builder, I would include windows for the bathroom. Why? For ventilation purposes. So that is just an example. But depending on the plan that is given to you, if you have to critique, if you have to criticize, just study your plan, understand it, see what is going on and what is it that we can do better if you were given the tender to build that particular house. And then we've got the elevations. Remember, I said the floor plan, it is the top view of the house. It focuses on the inside. So the elevations, they focus where? On the outside of the building, the outside of your home. You've got the front, you've got the sides, you've got the back. So all those parts, we call them what? Elevations. The one that is in the front, that is facing the streets, the pretty part, is called the front elevation. The one at the back that we normally neglect, we don't paint, is called the back elevation, whereas the ones on the sides are called your side elevations. And then we can name them side 1, side 2, or if you want, you can name them left or right elevations. And if they're going to give you a floor plan and elevation plan, they might ask you to match which room is represented by maybe the front elevation. If you're looking at this, they can ask you the front elevation here, it represents which part of the floor plan. So you must be able to study them, understand them, and link the difference between the two. And then lastly, under the section of maps and plans, it is the instructions and assembling diagrams. They can give you a picture of a chair that needs to be assembled. They can either ask you to give the step-by-step instructions on how to assemble that chair, or they can give you the instructions and have them mixed up, and then they ask you to arrange the instructions in order. This is normally a very nice and easy question. So you guys are normally doing well on it. I hope also on Monday it will be a nice question that you guys will be able to answer. And then the section of packaging, we know that with packaging, it's all about choosing a method that allow us to pack as many items as possible in the most limited amount of space. And then just remember this, that with packaging, when we are calculating the number of items that will be packed in a container or in a box, if maybe your answer, you were doing the calculations length, divide by length, and then you got the answer to be 9,9, we will always round down. It means only 9 items can fit in, because if you want to squeeze in the 10th one, it won't be able to fit in because of the limited amount of space. And then our big section, measurements. With measurements, the first part of measurement, it is your conversions. Guys, if you can master your conversions, if you know your conversions, I promise you, you are going to pass paper 2, because most of the stuff in paper 2 is all about conversions, not only in measurements, but also in the previous section that we just discussed now, the maps and plans. When you do your actual distance, they'll give you the measurement in centimeters. They want the actual distance in meters. You must convert. They'll ask you to measure the distance in millimeters, and they want the actual distance in kilometers. You must be able to convert. So if you know your conversions, if you master your conversions, you know paper 2, you are going to do well in paper 2. You must know what is perimeter. You must be able to explain it and know how to calculate it. Remember, perimeter, it is the distance around a shape. You must know how to explain area and be able to calculate area, volume, surface area, and also the section of measuring weight. Again, with the same as maps and plans, we also have the terminology for measurements. Please go back to your classwork books. We did measurements in term 2 as well. At the beginning of the topic, there's the glossary of terms. Just go and scan through those terminologies so that you can see when you talk about area, what are we referring to? When you talk about capacity, what is the difference between capacity and volume? You must know what is a growth chart, what is an imperial system, what is a circumference, the perimeter of a circle. When you talk about a perimeter, what are we referring to? So all these terminologies, go and look at them, scan through them, make sure that when you come across them in the exam, it's not something that you see for the very first time. So guys, the conversion between the metric system, this type of conversion, you are expected to know it by heart in grade 12, because this is something that you've been taught from grade 10 in Maths Lit, grade 11, and up to grade 12. So the metric system, you must know it. It won't be given to you. When you talk about the metric system of length, we are talking about your millimeters, your kilometers, your centimeters, your meters. So you must know how to convert between all those units, and you must know it by heart. So what do you use to help you remember? Even with myself at my age, with the number of years that I've been teaching, if you can wake me up at 12 o'clock and say, hey, how do you convert from centimeters to meters? I won't be able to tell you. I'll have first to wake up and sit down and write my song. What is my song? The King Henry song. To say that King Henry died miserable death called measles or mala. I will have to write this first, and then once I've written this, I know in between here is a 10, it's a 10, it's a 10, 10, 10, and it's a 10. K stands for what? For kilometers. So if you are moving from this one to that side, you are always going to multiply. If you are moving from the smaller unit to the bigger units, you are always going to do what? To divide. So I know once I've got this, and then you ask me to convert from centimeters to meters, I will know, because I know from centimeters to meters, I've got 1, 2 tens, meaning that the conversion factor is actually what? It's 100. And because I'm moving towards that direction, it means I'll have to divide by 100. If you wanted me to convert between kilometers to meters, I know how many tens I have there. It's 1, 2, 3. So how many tens? 1, 2, 3. And because I'm moving from a bigger unit to that one, it means I'll have to multiply. So once you know this by heart, you understand how it's done, you are safe to go. And then secondly, it is the conversion between mass. When you talk about mass, how we measure our weight. If I wanted to know how big I am, I'll have to climb on a bathroom scale and check my mass, my weight, which will be given in what? In kilograms. And then if I wanted to know the mass of this calculator, I cannot use kilograms, but I'll have to use what? Grams, because this is too small. If I wanted to know the mass of a tablet that we drink when we are not well, I cannot use grams, I cannot use kilograms, but I will have to use what? Milligrams, because it's such a tiny object. If I wanted to know the mass of a truck is huge. I can't use kilograms, but I'll have to use what? Tons. So let's do our conversion factor. Our conversion factor is between kilograms and grams, and the conversion factor between this is what? It's 1,000. Sometimes maybe you might be expected to convert to milligrams as well. You don't panic. The conversion factor is also 1,000. If ever you are expected to work with tons, you don't panic, because the conversion factor again is also 1,000. So with mass, it's nice. It's just 1,000 when you move from one unit to another. And if you're moving from the bigger unit to the smaller ones, you multiply. When you move from the smaller units to the bigger one, you will always do what? You will always divide. And then when it comes to volume, volume is your liquid, like the amount of water that is in this bottle. Because this is a small bottle, we will use what? We'll use the unit of milliliters. And then the unit that is above this one, it is in liters. And then lastly, if I wanted a huge amount of water, like the amount of water in a swimming pool, I will have to use kiloliters. So the conversion factor of volume is liters and milliliters. And then sometimes you might be asked to convert from kiloliters. And then again with this one, is very easy. It's just 1,000. It is just 1,000. When you move from a larger unit to a smaller one, we multiply. From a smaller unit to a bigger one, what do? We divide. So all these three, guys, all these three, you must know them by heart. And I promise you, you will never write a paper 2 and there's nowhere where you have to do conversions. Almost every question, you will be expected to convert something there. So make sure that you know this. King Henry died miserable death called measles. Make sure you know your mass conversions, your volume conversions. Go and memorize them if you have to. On Monday morning, when you get your question paper, when they say you may start, at the back of your question paper, you write them here. You write your DSTV formula. You write your King Henry died miserable death. You write your mass conversions. You write your volume conversions before you even open your question paper. So that when you start, you know there is no way you are going to finish writing the paper and you don't use these items. And then there's also what we call the imperial system. The imperial system, it is the system of measurement that is used overseas. It's not the one that we use here in our country is the metric system. Your kilometers, your meters, your kilograms, your liters, that is ours. The one that is used overseas, like in the US, it is called the imperial system. So you must also know how to convert between the metric and the imperial system. But the nicest thing about this one is that you don't have to know it by heart. The conversion factors will always be given to you. Like this table that is indicated here. There is one for length. There is one for weight or mass. Length is this distance. And then lastly, capacity, volume. So these ones will always be given to you. And then most of the time here, you will have to use your ratios and proportions to do the conversions. These ones, you don't have to stress about them. The conversion factors will always be given to you, but expect them. And then we've got our cooking conversions. We see these ones when you are working with recipes. They will give you a recipe to say, there is Mem Zulu. She's baking cakes for her grade 12 learners, and this is her recipe. The one thing that you must always, that is very important, when you are given a recipe, they will tell you that this recipe serves how many people. That information is very, very important, because there's somewhere, somehow, whereby a question will want you to refer back to that statement that this recipe serves so many people. So what you must know, you don't even have to know this by heart. It will always be given again, that when you talk about a teaspoon, we are talking about 5 milliliters. They can ask you to convert maybe 3 teaspoons to milliliters if 1 teaspoon is equals to 5 milliliters. So these ones will also be given to you. 1 tablespoon, 15 milliliters, 1 cup, 215 milliliters. So it means that they can ask you to convert 4 cups to milliliters. So sometimes they can even ask you to convert 4 cups to liters. But what you have here is milliliters. So you must first convert your 4 cups to milliliters, and then from milliliters convert it to liters. And then the temperature conversions, I normally say that the temperature question is just the examiner being nice and giving you 3 marks. Normally this one is 2 or 3 marks. They'll give you the temperature in degrees Fahrenheit, and they want you to calculate the temperature in degrees Celsius. So if they give you 2 formulas, they want the temperature in degrees Celsius, obviously you will use the first formula. But if they've given you the temperature in degrees Celsius and they want the degrees Fahrenheit, the one that they want will always be on this side. Then it means you will have to choose this formula. The tricky part about this question is that the examiner will always, in most of the time, they instruct you to give your answer rounded off to the nearest whole number or to the nearest temperature. So here, they'll be testing your rounding skills. So it means there's a special mark for rounding properly. When they say to the nearest whole number, it means that they expect your answer to be a whole number. They don't want decimals, they don't want fractions. If maybe, let's say your answer was 35,3. So this to the nearest whole number would be 35. If you got the answer and then it was 42,93, to the nearest whole number, it will be what? It will be 43. Sometimes they can say round it off to the nearest 10. When they say round off to the nearest 10, it means they want your answer to be in multiples of 10. Let's say you were calculating and your answer was 103,97. If they say round off to the nearest 10, your answer must be in multiples of 10. So from 103, it means you are from 100. Now you're moving to 110. So you ask yourself, 103, is it closer to 100? Is it closer to 110? So this one is obviously closer to what? 200. So most of the questions of temperature, they will be assessing your rounding skills. Don't mess up, guys, on this one. You've done this from grade 10. Please make sure that you get that 3 marks. It's for free. Your time. Guys, time is going to be the death of you. Yay. Time is a disaster. It's a disaster. So you must know how to read the time values on your clock or your watch. You must know the difference between your analog and your digital. So this one is an example of an analog, and then this one is an example of digital. And guys, grade 12, guys, you must know how to read out time. Yo, it's so embarrassing when you're asked to read out time here and people are just giving the wrong answers in metric. No, it's unacceptable. And then you must know the difference between your 12-hour and your 24-hour format. With the 12-hour format, we'll always use the AMs and the PMs because the numbers are the same. So it means you can have 1:20 AM. You can also have 1:20 PM. Then you know that this is the 12-hour format. We call it the 12-hour because the numbering, it ends at 12. We don't continue to 13, 14, and whatever. Whereas the 24-hour format, we can have the 2 o'clock. We can also have the 1400. You will know that this one means in the morning. This one means when? In the afternoon. So this one is the 24-hour format. And then this one, it is the 12-hour format. The 12-hour, the numbers are written the same, but it will have your AMs and your PMs. With the 24-hour format, it's not the same because the numbering goes up to 24, hence the 24-hour format. And then you must also know your time conversions, guys, that when you talk about a minute is equivalent to 60 seconds. An hour is the same as 60 minutes. Guys, this, you are expected to know this by heart. The time conversions, you are expected to know them. You've been doing this from grade 4. If you didn't do them in grade 4, you must go and ask for a change. You must go and get your change. So an hour is 60 minutes. A day is 24 hours. A week, it's 7 days, Monday to Sunday. A month, in Mathslit, we work with the standard 4 weeks. A year, 12 months. When you talk about a century, we are talking 100 years. When you talk millennium, it's 10 centuries. Remember, a century is 100 years, meaning that a millennium is 100 years. And then there's also one, a decade. A decade means what? It means 10 years. So make sure that you know this. This is general knowledge. The examiner expects you guys to know this by heart. Make sure that you know it. If ever you are asked a decade, you must know that it means it's 10 years. If you are ever asked about a century, you must know that century means what? 100 years. General knowledge that you guys are expected to know. Now, when it comes to the calculations of perimeter, area, and volume, the number one rule, always make sure that your units are the same. Always. You are in grade 12, the examiner will never say to you, calculate the perimeter by first making sure that the units are the same, or by first converting the units. Never. They'll just say calculate the perimeter and leave you alone. They'll say calculate the area and leave you alone. You'll see to finish how you get to the answer. So the number one rule, whatever diagram is given to you, always check that your units are the same. I'm telling you, there is no way that all your diagrams are going to have the same units. There's going to be that 1 or 2 questions whereby maybe they can give you a diagram of a suitcase. It can have a height in centimeters, width in millimeters, and then its height, width, and the length maybe in meters. 3 different units. You must know that I cannot work with units that are not the same. Immediately, you convert those units. Don't convert them on a scrap paper or at the back of your question paper. Do all your workings in your answer sheet. All your workings, you do them in your answer sheet. If it comes to a push, you draw a line that this is question 3, and then draw a line that this is my rough work, and that is where you do your rough work. Please, guys. And then also, please, while I still remember, refrain, guys, refrain. I repeat, refrain from writing with a pencil. You are in grade 12. Please write with a blue pen. And then also stop this tendency of writing with a pencil, and then you come back later, you rewrite with a pen and you raise a pencil. You are wasting time. It means you're actually writing 2 question papers within 3 hours. You write with your pen. If you made a mistake, you draw a line, you start over in the next line. Time is moving. Time is not on your side. So number 1, make sure that all your units are the same. The issue of the definitions, I've already covered it. You must know your concepts. And then if you are given a diagram and you are given a diameter, you must know. Once you are given a diameter, you are definitely going to be asked to determine the radius. So I'm expecting by now that all the grade 12 learners know that the diameter is the line that touches the circle from one end to the other. Let's say maybe the diameter was 10 centimeters. If the diameter is 10 centimeters, it means the radius would be 5 centimeters, because the radius will always be half of the diameter. So it means if you are given the radius, you want the diameter, you'll multiply that radius by 2. But most of the time, you are given a diagram, it has a diameter, definitely you will be expected to determine the radius, and then you must use the given value of pi. You will always be given the value of pi. I know we've got most of our learners that were doing mathematics in the previous grades, pure maths. So in pure maths, you would be allowed to use the value of pi on the calculator, or you would be allowed to use 22/7. In mathematical literacy, we work with the given value of pi, which is equals to what? I think it's 3,142. But you don't have to stress about this, because it will always be given to you in the exam next to the formula. So please don't try to do things that are not there. You use the pi that is given to you. They will tell you, given the value of pi is equals to 3,142. You work with this one. And then, girls and boys, in measurements, you'll always be given your formulas. You'll always be given the formula. If they want you to calculate the volume of a cylinder, the formula should be there. And they want you to calculate the surface area of a triangle or rectangular prism, the formula will be given to you. But I've seen this new tendency now, whereby they ask you in a form of multiple choice. to say that if you wanted to calculate the volume of a cylinder, which formula would you use? And then remember, us as Meslit learners, we are always relaxed that we don't have to know them by heart because they give them to us. Now they've given you the 4, they want you to select the correct one. So please go and study your formulas. I'm not saying memorize them, but just have an idea that this is the volume of a rectangular prism, this is the volume of a cylinder. When you want a circumference of a circle, know the difference between a circumference of a circle and the formula for determining the area of a circle. Two different things. They are very different. You might be asked to identify the correct formula. So those are just 2 marks for free, guys. And then if you are calculating an area and you are given a complex shape, remember when you introduce this topic in class, we'll give you the area of a circle, the area of a square, the area of a rectangle. But because we are in grade 12, girls and boys, when you are assessed in the final exam, you will never be given a square and we say calculate the area of the square. Never. We'll just give you a complex shape, maybe a house. From that house, you must be able to identify that, oh, the windows are squares and they want me to calculate the area of the windows. They can give you pot plants, round pot plants. It's a pot plant. But you must be able to see that, oh, because it's round, it means when I want the area, I must use the area of a circle. So if you're working with complex shapes, when calculating the area, you can break down your shape into familiar shapes and then calculate the area of shape 1, the area of shape 2. Then at the end, you combine the areas together. And then again, another thing, guys, very important that we often neglect, you must write the correct units. You must know that when you are working with perimeter, you have single units. When it's area, it is square units. And then lastly, when it's volume, it is cubic units. And then lastly, you must now know how to calculate your perimeter, your area volume, and the surface area by using the given formula. So you must expect that if the examiner wants you to do calculations, they will give you the formula that you must use. Guys, for this section of calculations, hey, you know what? Even if you feel like is the end of the world for you, is the end of your life, you are doomed, this question paper was difficult, please do not give up, especially on the section of measurement when you are given a formula. Even if you don't understand, girls and boys, number 1, just check that all your units are the same. If you see that something is different, convert it and make all the units the same. And then take whatever the formula that is given to you, take it and just substitute you will see something must come up. You will never get 0. So what I want you to know is that you can never ever give up in the section of measurements because the formulas are given to you. So just take the formula that is given to you and just substitute, and then you will see something must come out there. And then another important thing that I almost forgot to mention, let's say you are asked to calculate the area of a circle is pi multiplied by the radius squared. When you substitute your radius, let's say is 5, you will say 3,142 multiplied by 5. The mistake that you guys always make, you just write 5 and you forget to square it. Remember, you must always say 5 squared. And then once you've squared it, when you press now on your calculator, you press it wrong. You say 5 multiplied by 2, which is very wrong. It's wrong. 5 squared means 5 multiplied by 5. This is the correct way of doing it. So this is incorrect. It's wrong. So please don't fumble. Don't repeat this mistake that was done by your brothers and your sisters in the previous years. You go in that exam room, you do better. And then the section of measuring weight, this also falls under measurement, your BMI. I know it's everybody's nightmare. BMI, you must know what does the acronym BMI stands for. It stands for Body Mass Index. They can ask you to explain it. What is the meaning of BMI? BMI does not mean body mass index. It stands for body mass index. So what is the body mass index? It is the system that we use to determine the health status of a person. Remember, we use the BMI to diagnose how healthy the person is, that you are underweight, you have a normal weight, are you overweight, are you obese. So the formula for BMI, guys, will always be given to you, that BMI is mass in kilograms and your height squared. The height is in meters. Girls and boys, always, when you work with the BMI, your mass must always be in kilograms. The examiner will trick you and give you the mass in grams. We're talking about the mass of a human being here. I can never measure myself and say my weight is 5,000 grams. Never. It must be in kilograms. Even the formula, the mass must be in kilograms. And then the height again must always be in meters. The examiner will trick you again and give you the height in centimeters. You must stay woke. You must know that the height in BMI must always be in meters. You must convert it. You are in grade 12. The examiner will not tell you that first convert. They expect you to know it already, that the mass when you work with BMI must always be in kilograms. It can be mass, can be weight, must always be in kilograms, whereas the height must always be in meters. And when you substitute in the formula, remember to always square the value of your height. And then once you've worked out this, you'll obviously be calculating the BMI of a person. After calculating the BMI of a person, then you diagnose the person. When you answer this question, you are a doctor. When you diagnose the person, you'll mention that this person is underweight, or you mention this person has a normal weight, depending on the answer that you got for their BMI, or you'll mention that they are overweight and they are obese. And then sometimes you find that you are calculating and then you find that the person is overweight or they are obese. And then the examiner can ask you, what advice would you give to this particular person? Then you can mention that, okay, as a health practitioner, I'm saying that this person must start exercising, they must start eating healthy, or they must go on a diet so they can lose some of the weight that is making them overweight. Sometimes the person is underweight. Again, underweight is not good. It's not healthy. What advice would you give to an underweight individual? That they must start maybe taking supplements, multivitamins. They must start eating well, eating healthy. Some of you will say they must eat junk food. No, when you eat junk food, then you're not going to be healthy. You're going to get sick. So they must eat healthy. They must take supplements, multivitamins. They can start exercising. So the advice that you give is the advice of a health practitioner. That is the nicest thing about our subject. It is such a diverse subject. We integrate everything. Everything relates to our subject. And then, guys, these are the possible exam questions that we can expect in Monday's paper. Question 1. The dimensions of the 2 bedrooms are given as follows. And then, before we go to the dimensions, you must please take note that 1 foot is equals to 30.48 centimeters. 1 inch is equals to 0.0254 meters. And then you are going to use the measurements given to calculate the total length of bedroom 2 and 4 in meters. Remember what I said here? We are seeing a conversion between imperial and metric system. And I told you that with the imperial, you then don't have to worry because the conversion factor will always be given to you. So here are the dimensions of bedroom 2 and bedroom 4. Bedroom 2, it is 4 feet and 5 inches long. And then it is also 10 feet and 9 inches wide. So they want us to convert the length, only the length of bedroom 2 and bedroom 4. So where do we start? We've got, and then they want the answer in what? In meters. So we've got 1 foot is equals to 30. Okay, let me start here to say bedroom 2. Bedroom 2, which is 14 feet and 5 inches. So I'm going to start by converting the feet. And then what is the conversion factor of the feet? It's 1 foot is equivalent to 30.48 centimeters. Guys, please take out your calculators. And how many feet do we have there? We've got 14 feet. And then we want the answer now in centimeters. So I don't know what is the answer. I'm going to make it x. So you say 1 multiplied by x, it is x. And then 14 multiplied by 30,48. We'll say 14 multiplied by 30,48. What is the answer? The answer is 426,72. But remember now the answer is what is in centimeters. But what was the instruction? They wanted the answer in meters. So what is the conversion factor between centimeters and meters? I don't know. So I will do that. King Henry died miserable death called measles. And then I know there's a 10, 10, 10, 10. So I want to convert what from centimeter to meter. I'm going back, meaning it is divide. By how many tens? 1, 2. So I must divide by 100. So I must take this and say divide by 100. Let's see, divide that by 100. The answer is 4,2672 meters. But remember, we've only converted the 14 feet. So we still have to convert the 5 inches. So let's look at the inches conversion. We know that 1 inch is equals to, okay, let me write it here. I'm sorry. 1 inch is equals to 0.0254 meters. And then how many inches do we have here? We have 5 inches. So I'll say 5 inches is equals to what? I don't know. So I'm going to make it x. And then we say 1 multiplied by x, it is x. And then 5 multiplied by 0.0254. 5 times 0.0254. What is the answer? The answer is 0.127, and this is in meters. So now if you want the total meters now, the total length for bedroom 2, it is going to be this 4,2672 plus this 0,127, and then the answer is 4,2. I hope you guys are also pressing there on your calculators, guys. 4,3942 meters. So this is the length in meters for bedroom number 2. And because of time and space, I'm not going to calculate the length for bedroom 4, but I hope you guys understand how I got to bedroom, how I got my total length, and then you apply the same principle to determine the total length for bedroom 2, for bedroom 4. You can even do the same for the total width for bedroom 2 and for bedroom 4. It's the same procedure. So this is how you work with your imperial and your metric system. And then question 2, Unathi is busy planning for the month of May 2022. The calendar of May 2022 is given alongside. So here is our calendar from the 1st of May, which is on a Sunday, up to the 31st of May, which is on a Tuesday. Write down the number of public holidays in May 2022. Let's read the calendar, guys. Hey, you guys. The 1st of May, it's Workers' Day, meaning it's a public holiday. And then on Monday, it says public holiday, Dad's birthday. And I see school camps, Granny comes visit, Mathlete, school camp. And then there is Mother's Day. Girls and boys, Mother's Day is not a public holiday. I know most of you will say Mother's Day is also a public holiday. Mother's Day, Father's Day, not public holiday. Special days, yes, very special, but not public holiday. And then again here, most of you are probably saying that we've got 2 public holidays. Not, it can't be, it's not possible. In May, we only have 1 public holiday. And because this public holiday was on a Sunday, in South Africa, if a public holiday is on a Sunday, then the Monday becomes a public holiday. That is why you see the Monday here is written public holiday. But the actual public holidays for the month of A, it's only one, which is what? Workers' Day. And then remember, for this particular year, the Workers' Day was on a Sunday. That is why the public holiday, we got it on a Monday. So the number of public holidays here, it is 1, or just the word 1. I hope we are okay. I hope we understand that. The Monday is a public holiday because the holiday was actually on the actual holiday was on a Sunday. 2.2, determine the number of days the learners are going to school in May 2022. So remember, we go to school when? Monday to Friday. And even on the days that they are at a camp, it means they are at school. So let's count. They went to school 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. I'm counting this, the Saturday and the Sunday, because they were at school for the school camp. So I said it's how many days? I think I said 21. It's 21 days. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Okay, 23. I'm sorry about that. It is 23 days. And then 2.3, the mathematical literacy exam will be written for 180 minutes. Convert the 180 minutes to hours. Remember the time conversions, and I said they expect you to know this by heart. So you must know that in an hour, how many minutes do we have? So I just know that in 1 hour, we've got what? We've got 60 minutes. And then in this case, how many minutes are we given? We are given 180 minutes. So we want the number of hours. We are going to make it unknown. So let's cross multiply. This would be 16x equals to 1 multiplied by 180. It is 180. We just want x, so we'll divide by what? By 16. Divide by what? By 60. The 60 and the 60, they cancel. So our number of minutes will be what? It's equals to 3, which is equals to 3 hours. So it means the 180 minutes is equivalent to 3 hours, which makes sense because our maths lit exam is 3 hours. The one that you wrote today was 3 hours. The one that you'll be writing on Monday will also be for 3 hours. 1.4, write down the time that the learners are leaving for the school camp in words. So let's look at our calendar. The camp starts on a Friday. So there is the camp, and then it is at 1500. But 1500 is not the proper way to say time. So the proper way to say this, it is 3 o'clock. So when you write it in words, we'll say 3 o'clock. You can add in the afternoon if you want, because it's 15, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, just to be safe. Question 3. Tlokwe District Municipality supplied 108 households of the top city municipality with 6 water tanks to provide clean drinking water to the community. The 6 tanks will be shared amongst the households. The diameter of each tank is 1,128 centimeters. If I was a matric learner and I see a diameter, I would be smiling because I know once they tell me about diameter, they're going to want me to determine the radius. And the height of the tank is 5.5 meters. The tank has a capacity of 1,500 liters. It means this tank can hold about 1,500 liters of water. So 3.1, determine the radius of the tank. You see what I told you? They gave us the diameter. They said the diameter was 1,128 centimeters, meaning that if you wanted the radius, you will say this divided by 2, which is equals to, it's 1,128 divided by 2. The answer is 564 centimeters. You've got your 2 marks. Done. Convert the height of the tank to centimeters. The height of the tank is what again? It is meters. So again, King Henry died miserable death called measles. And then our height is currently in what? In meters. So we must convert 5,5 meters to what? To centimeters. We are moving toward 2 centimeters. We know there's a 10. We know there's a 10. So we are moving from a bigger unit to a smaller one. So it's going to be 5,5. We are going to divide. I'm sorry, we are multiplying. We are multiplying, guys. I'm sorry. From a bigger unit to a smaller one, we multiply. And how many zeros are in between? 1, 2. So we multiply by 100. So we say 5,5 times by 100. And then we get what? We get 550 centimeters. So that is how we do our conversions. And then 3.3, you must convert the 1,500 liters capacity to kiloliters. Remember the volume conversions? I said that it is kiloliters, it is liters, and it is milliliters. And then the conversion factor is 1,000. It's 1,000. When we move from a bigger one to a smaller one, you multiply. From a smaller one to a bigger one, we are going to divide. So in this case, we are converting from liters to kiloliters. So what are we going to do? From a smaller one to a bigger one, we are going back, meaning we are going to do what? We are going to divide. So we'll take the 1,500 liters, and then we are going to divide it by how much? By 1,000, which is going to give us how much? I think it's going to give us 1.5 kiloliters. So it's 1,500 divided by 8,000, and then it's giving us 1.5 kiloliters. That is how you convert from liters to kiloliters. And then 3.4, choose the formula that can be used to calculate the circumference of the base of the tank. Remember, the tank is a cylinder, meaning the base of the cylinder is a circle. So if you were to calculate the circumference, that is where I said that you must know the formula. You must know your formulas, because you can also be asked to choose the correct one. So the correct answer here, pi times radius, no. 2 times pi times radius, yes, this is the correct circumference. Or there is either this one, or you can even say circumference is equals to pi multiplied by diameter. Either this one or that one, but this one is definitely not the correct one. So this, either this or this, it is the formula for the circumference of a circle. And then question 4, like I said, that you must also expect a question on a recipe. Question 4, Maria uses the recipe below to bake scones. The ingredients of this is enough to make 1 dozen. Guys, another way that is very, very important. You guys must know by now that a dozen means what? When they say, go to the tuck shop and buy half dozen of eggs. How many eggs do you bring home? You bring home 6 eggs. So this means that 1 dozen is actually equivalent to 12. So when you talk about a dozen, we are referring to 12. Half dozen, half of 12, which is equals to 6. 2 dozen, 12, which is 24. So you must know that this recipe makes 12 scones. So here are the ingredients. You've got butter, eggs, milk, flour, raisins, and whatever. And then your baking instructions, you must bake for 15 minutes at 200 degrees Celsius. Like I said, that this means 12. Let's look at the questions now. Convert the mass of the flour to kilograms. Let's look at our flour. Our flour is 500 grams. And then when we work with our conversions for mass, we said from kilograms to grams, the conversion factor is 1,000. When you go in that side, you multiply. When you go in that side, you divide. So in this case, we are moving from grams to kilograms. And then we are converting what? 500 grams, meaning we are going to divide by 1,000, which will give us 0.5 kilograms. And that is your answer. This is normally for 2 marks. You see, if you don't know your conversions, you already lost out on that 2 marks. 4.2, determine the number of large eggs that are needed to make 30 scones. Remember this recipe of us, it makes how many scones? 12 scones. And then how many eggs are used here in the recipe? We are actually using 2 large eggs. So I'm going to write it down. For 2 eggs, we will actually get what? 12 scones, because remember we said dozen means 12, right? 12 scones. And then now we want to know how many eggs will make 13 scones. So this one, I don't know, I will make it x. And then from here, I will cross multiply. Say x multiplied by 12, it is 12x. And then 2 multiplied by 13, it is what? It is 60. We want the value of x, not 12x. We divide by 12. We divide by 12. Then 12 and 12, they cancel. Therefore, this is equals to 16 divided by 12 is equals to 5. So it means how many large eggs will be needed? 5 large eggs will be needed if you are going to make 30 scones. 4.3, each scone has an average diameter. Guys, when they say each, it means one. One scone has an average diameter of 7 centimeters. Write down the average radius of each scone. So if the diameter is equals to 7 centimeters, therefore the radius would be equals to what? You say 7 centimeters divided by 2, which is equals to 3.5 centimeters. For 2 marks, the scones were placed in the oven to bake at 1410. Write down in words the time the scones were placed in the oven. So 1410 is not the correct way of saying it, but the correct way of saying it is 10 minutes past 2. So when you write it in words, you'll say 10 minutes past 2. And because it is 14, it means in the afternoon. So you'll add again in the afternoon. So don't bother in the exam. 4.5, calculate how many full dozen scones can be made with 500 gram butter. How many full dozen scones can be made with 500 butter? So we know that 1 dozen. For 1 dozen, how much butter do we use? We are using 75 grams. And then for 500 gram butter, how many dozens? We don't know. So we'll cross multiply. This would be 75x. And then 1 multiplied by 500 would be 500. So divide by 75, divide by 75. So this and that, they cancel. So x equals to, divide by 75. We've got 6.667. But we want the number of full dozen. A dozen, it means it must be a tray of 12 scones. So if you say 7, it won't be 7 full scones. The last tray will be maybe half. It won't be full. So the full trays that you can actually have is actually 6 full dozen. That is the correct answer. You will round down because the 7th one won't be full, it will be half. So if you count in the full ones, it is only 6. And then Mrs. Bester sells 450 gram packs of rusk at 49.50 per pack. The table below shows the main ingredients to bake 5,000 grams of rusk. So this recipe is enough for 5,000 grams of our rusk. So now let's see if we have some questions here. 5.1, convert the 1.56 kilograms to grams. So this is the 1.56. Remember, when you convert between kilograms to grams, the conversion factor is 1,000. When you are going this way, you multiply. When you are going back, you will divide. So we are converting 1.56 kilograms. Because we are going to grams, we are going that way, we will multiply by 1,000. And then our answer would be 1,560 grams. And then we must write in simplified ratio the mass of raisins to mass of butter. The ratio question, guys, very, very important. It's always the paper 1, paper 2. They'll always ask you of ratio that you did in grade 10. So the order in which a question is asked is very important. The order said mass of raisins to the mass of butter. So the way that you write is going to be raisins first, and then it's going to be what? Is going to be butter. So what is the mass of our raisins? It's 125 grams. And then what is the mass of our butter? Is 625 grams. So in simplified ratio form, you punch in your calculator. In your calculator, say 125 divided by 625. I'm going to do it as well. 125 divided by 625. It is 1/5. When you write this as a ratio, it is 1:5. So the simplest form, it is 1:5. That is the ratio of raisins is to butter. Calculate the number of cups of bran flour needed if Mrs. Bester bakes 8 kilograms of rusk. So they want us to calculate what? The number of cups of flour that are needed if she bakes 8 kg of rusk. First of all, her recipe covers 5,000 grams. So it means we'll have to convert this 5,000 grams to kilograms. And how do we convert from grams to kilograms? We will divide. We'll say 5,000 grams divide by 8,000, which will give us 5 kilograms. So it means for this recipe, she makes 5 kilograms. So for 5 kilograms, she uses how much flour? She uses 6.25 cups. So we want to know for 8 kilograms, how many cups of flour? We don't know. So we'll say 5 times this, it is 5x, and then 8 multiplied by 6.25, it will give us 50. We'll divide here by 5 so that the 5 and the 5 can cancel. Divide by 5. Therefore, x will be equals to 10. It means that for 8 kilograms, we'll actually need 8 cups of flour. And then 1.4, time is not on our side, guys, when there is so much that still needs to be done. 1.4, calculate the mass of raisins needed to bake 450 gram pack of rusk. So remember, for 5,000 grams of rusk, the raisins that we needed, it was 125 grams. So now, if we have 450 grams, how many raisins? We want the mass of the raisins, so we'll make it x. And then you say 5,000 multiplied by that. And then 450 multiplied by 125. It is a big number, 56,250. Divide by 5,000, divide by 5,000, so that the 5,000 and the 5,000 can cancel. So the answer divided by 5,000. So we will need 11.25 grams of raisins to make 450 grams of rusks. And then we've got a map here. They say Busisiwe lives in Irene. The map alongside shows a layout plan of Irene. Some streets end in cul-de-sac. Cul-de-sac, it means where the street ends. You can't continue. There's nothing else. Like it's the end of the road. For example, if you are traveling here in Crowell, when you get here on Main, this is cul-de-sac. It ends here. You cannot continue anymore. The street ends. Just the end of the road. Yes, like, or this one here. When you get here, it ends. It's finished. This one here, when you get here, it ends. That is a cul-de-sac. The arrows on some streets show traffic flow in one direction only. So when you see these arrows here, it means the traffic must only flow towards that one direction. So if you get a map and then there are arrows on the streets, you must know that those arrows means that it is a one-way direction. So you can't come in that street if you are going the opposite direction. What I'm also noticing about our map is that we've got a compass direction, and you see what I was talking about is not a normal compass direction. Normally we know our north supposed to be here, but because they say north is this side, we work with this north that is facing the side. And then we've got other places of interest. Number 1 is the Colonial Guest House. So you go to our map and then we look for number 1. There is number 1. So it means this is the Colonial Guest House. And then I see number 3 here. Let's see, what is the number 3? Is the Concentration Camp Memorial. So all these keys are very, very important. They will not give them to you and then they don't ask you about them. The fact that they're given to you, it means they will ask you questions about them. And then here we've got a railway line. So if you see the lines like these ones here, then you know that this represents the railway line. And then lastly, if you see a dot, it is the entrance of the school. Like here, Irene Primary School, I see a dot. It means this is the entrance to the school. So 6.1, write down the place. Before I read this question, did you guys see what happened? I got this map. Before I even went to the questions, I analyzed my map. I checked my compass direction. I checked the places of interest that are given to me, and I identified them on the map. Now that I'm ready, I'm armed, I've got all the information, I can go and answer the questions, because when they ask me, I will know what they're talking about because I already saw it. So write down the place of interest that is situated at the corner of Kruger Street and Bruce Street. So let's look at those streets. Here is Bruce Street, guys. This is your Bruce, and this is Kruger. So the corner of Bruce and Kruger is this place here, and then the place is indicated by the number 4. It means I must go to my keys and then I check number 4. It is actually what the Scout House. This is what you must expect on Monday when you are given a map. I told you that the answers are all there. You just have to open your eyes and understand. The answers are all there. And then give the general direction. Again, here is the question. When they talk about the general direction, it means they want the compass direction. Just the compass. When you see general, compass. Give the general direction from Bastion Guest House to the station and shopping center. Guys, at the moment they say from Bastion, it means we are going to draw our compass there. So let's look for Bastion Guest House here. Bastion, or here is Bastion Guest House, but we don't look at the word. Remember, we look for the position. This is Bastion Guest House. This is where we are going to draw our compass. And remember, our compass is abnormal. It is east here, it is south here, it is west, and then it is north. So what do they want? They want the general direction of what? To station and shopping center. So where is station and shopping center? This is station and shopping center. So what is the general direction? Ooh, there is the general direction. So the correct answer, it is southeast. It's southeast. So the correct answer, it is southeast. And then name the street that the railway line crosses. I said this is the key for the railway line, and there's only one railway line on the map. This is our railway line. Which street does it cross? It crosses this street. What is the name of the street? It is Nel Mapias. So the name of the street is Nel Mapias. Give the name of the church that is found in King Street. So let's look at our King. There is King Street. Any building that resembles a church is this one because of the cross. We know the symbol of a church on a map, it is a cross. And then it's number 5. Let's look at our keys. Number 5. So the name of the church, it's St. Martin's Church. Girls and boys, unfortunately, we have come to the end of our session. I actually extended the lesson by 30 minutes. There was so much that I still wanted to do with you, but hopefully, luckily, with paper 2, we still have the weekend. We still have Saturday and Sunday to push and do more revision to prepare better for our paper 2 on Monday. Guys, please, if you are asked to come to school, please show up. I know it's cold. I know it's raining in Gauteng, but remember, you are doing this one more time for the last time. So whatever results that you are going to get, these are your final results. It's not like when you're writing prelim to say that I will do better in the final exam. This is the final exam. There's nothing else. There's no better that you can do more than this better right now. So yes, my time is up, guys. All the best. Please remember everything that you've learned. Get access of all our video lessons. Go and revise those topics. Go and look at your previous question papers. Most important thing, show up. When your teachers ask you to come to school, please show up. All the best for your Monday's paper. Thank you so much.